April 26th, 1478. Francesco Pazzi sprints towards the Medici palace, worrying they may be too late. In the cathedral, High Mass has started. There are already 2 assassins staged behind Lorenzo Medici, ready to kill him when the cardinal raises the communion host and the cathedral bell rings. And on that signal, bands of Pazzi retainers and mercenaries across the city will spring into action to overthrow the government. But Lorenzo's brother Giuliano has not turned up for Mass, and should they only kill one brother while the other sits safe in the Medici palace, the plot will fail. But there's also no time to abort. In fact, he worries they've already been discovered and Giuliano is faking illness. Though when Francesco talks his way past the guards into Giuliano's chamber, he realizes this is no fake. Giuliano is bedbound with sciatic pain. It would be easy to slit his throat in this condition, but that would both give them away and ensure they were caught. So instead, Francesco and his accomplice Bangini sit on the edge of Giuliano's sickbed, put on big false smiles, and try to persuade him to attend his own murder. Want to take some history home? Then why not check out our newly restocked store? If you act fast, you can snag one of our few remaining 2025 Extra History calendars, brand new worst mugs in history, shirts, pins, plushies, and a whole lot more. By the time Francesco Pazzi entered Giuliano's bedroom, the Pazzi Conspiracy had been starting to fall apart. For months, they'd attended Medici parties or invited them to Pazzi dinners, hoping to kill the brothers, only to be foiled when Giuliano didn't show. First, he had a fever, then the sciatic pain likely brought on by sports injuries. And each time they aborted and delayed, the possibility of being discovered became higher. Finally, they decided to engineer an opportunity. Pope Sixtus had elevated yet another of his nephews to cardinal and arranged for the teenage prince of the church to visit Florence as a way of mending bridges. The plan was to kill the Medici brothers at the cardinal's welcome banquet. Yet again, however, Giuliano had been a no-show. But now there was just no more delaying. Pazzi mercenaries were already infiltrating the city, plotters were staging troops. It had to happen within hours, or the plan definitely would leak. So at the banquet, they decided it should happen at High Mass the next day. With the new cardinal conducting the service, propriety insisted that both brothers attend, and they would do it when they knelt for communion. Actually, 2 years before, the same tactic had been used to kill plot leader Girolamo Riario's father-in-law, the man who'd sold Imola to Sixtus, starting the feud between the Pope and the Medici. But the sacrilege of killing in a church proved too much for Montesecco, the mercenary hired to shadow and kill Lorenzo. He backed out of the plot and had to be replaced at the last minute by a pair of low-level priests, who were promised elevation in the church if they did this deed for the Pope. The plot would only succeed, though, if both brothers were in the cathedral at the appointed time, which is why Francesco and Bangini came to bring Giuliano personally. Francesco worked on him smiling. He joked and wheeled, said the Mass just wouldn't be the same without you, bro, that he needed to come in order to show respect to the visiting cardinal. When Giuliano said he was just in too much pain, Francesco quipped, I mean, I'll carry you if I have to. So Giuliano hauled himself out of bed and began limping to the cathedral with Francesco, his brother-in-law and friend. His retainers followed behind. The 2 men embraced Giuliano, cheering that he'd rallied and decided to come. They supported him as he walked, and Francesco even patted his belly, joking about the weight he'd gained during his convalescence. But this chummy physical affection actually wasn't friendly. They were checking him for body armor. They made it just in time, entering the cathedral and pushing through the crowd of 10,000 just as they were bringing out the communion host. Now, due to the chaos about to erupt, accounts differ here. Some say Giuliano made it to kneel at the front, like we showed in episode 1, while others say Giuliano was still limping through the crowd, supported by the plotters when things started. In this version, they're only about a third of the way into the cathedral when the cardinal raises the host. Above, the bell tolls. "Traitor!" they yell. Bangini sinks his dagger deep into Giuliano's side. As the Medici's knees buckle, Francesco falls on him with a savage fury, punching his dagger down into Giuliano's chest again and again and again, continuing even as the man collapses onto the terracotta floor. The crowd screams and parts, fleeing. Giuliano's retainers also bolt, their patron clearly dead, and yet the assassins continue butchering the Golden Prince of the Medici. They stab him 19 times, so hard that one of the blows penetrates his skull, sinking several inches into his head. As Francesco, spattered in blood, rises to make his way towards Lorenzo, he finds himself limping. He attacked Giuliano so wildly, he accidentally stabbed his own thigh. But across the cathedral, no one realizes what's occurring. The noise and the press of the crowd smothers the killing, so Lorenzo kneels before the host as the priests behind him draw their swords. Now, had it been the mercenary Montesecco, Lorenzo would have had no chance. But the terrified priests here are no killers, and as one grabs Lorenzo by the shoulder, trying to keep him still for his blade, Lorenzo wheels around at the touch, the plunging sword barely missing his throat, instead slashing the side of his neck. Lorenzo shoves the priest back and draws his own blade. Now, Lorenzo is no swordsman, and he's using one hand to staunch the wound in his throat, but even his clumsy blade work is enough to parry the priest's equally awkward blows. Only one priest is attacking, the other frozen in fright, and after a brief clash of blades, Lorenzo darts away from his attackers, shouting for help. Everything now is chaos. The sight of naked steel in the cathedral has panicked the crowd and caused a stampede for the exits. Meanwhile, Medici retainers are fighting the press of bodies to try to save their lord. Lorenzo then bolts to the only clear area, the altar, where the stunned teenage cardinal has frozen with the host still in hand, his priests trying to usher him away. Lorenzo then vaults a railing meant to separate the congregants from the priests, his boots sliding on the tile as he lands. Then he catches two men coming towards him, their blades already slicked with blood. Francesco Pazzi limping, following behind Bengini. Lorenzo is weakening, leaving dots of blood on the floor. "Giuliano!" he yells, calling again for help. The assassin raises his sword for a blow, but with a clang, a Medici retainer comes in sideways and beats aside the blade. This man is no young bodyguard. In fact, he's nearly 50, the manager of the Florentine branch of the Medici Bank. Yet he throws himself into combat with the younger man to cover Lorenzo's escape. He pays for it with his life. While he swatted aside the assassin's first blow, the next sinks deeply into his belly. But that sacrifice lets Lorenzo get past the altar to a group of Medici retainers coming up around the side. They pull him into the closest, most secure room at hand, the cathedral's north sacristy, a chamber for storing the expensive priestly clothing and altarpieces used during the Mass. It has thick doors, made stronger by the metal plates of biblical scenes the Medici commissioned to decorate them. Lorenzo, shaking in white, looks out into the cathedral as his retainers put their shoulders into shutting the massive doors as the assassins still run toward them. "Giuliano?" he calls. "Where is Giuliano? Has anyone seen him?" No one answers. A retainer begins sucking on the wound in his neck, then spitting out the blood on the floor, trying to draw out any poison in case the assassins have dipped their blades in venom. They can't tell him where Giuliano is. No one knows. Indeed, they will know very little for the next hours. The sacristy is secure, with few exits and high windows. All they know is that they can hear the muffled sounds of mobs in the streets of Florence. They dare not open the door until a Medici retainer, risking his life, climbs up from the room and into the organ loft so he can see the cathedral from above. He reports no waiting assassins. The cathedral is deserted apart from the body of the bank manager and the butchered form of Lorenzo's missing brother. When the retainers open the door and usher Lorenzo out, they surround him in a huddle, swords drawn. Here they are guarding not only their lord's body, but his manly composure, for they do not want him to see the horror of his murdered brother. A boy he'd held as a baby, who had been his constant companion, the golden, handsome sibling the city and he had loved. But exactly how much the city loved Giuliano was about to be revealed. For while there were Florentines who saw the Medici as tyrants, rumors of the attack in the cathedral were already in the streets, and the city's vengeance was about to fall on the Pazzi. Say, want more historical facts every day? Then visit our newly restocked store and get one of our few remaining History Happens Every Day 2025 calendars. Then once you've snagged that and some of the best mugs, pins, and plushies in history, check out our next video here. Hey y'all, I want to take a moment to thank Gilead Architectures, Kuya Koi, Joseph Blame, Hunter Z, Fox Doc, Dominic Valenciana, Arcolite Games, and Angelo Valenciana for stepping into my old-timey detective shop and becoming legendary patrons.